Welcome to Nome, a small town located in the south of Seward Peninsula on the west coast of Alaska. If you live here, I'll bet you say there's no place like Nome. Well, maybe not. It's cold and snowy here, and no roads connect this town with other settlements. And with the onset of night, locals have disappeared here without a trace. Perhaps that's why only 3,500 people live here. Well, let's investigate this case. People disappear in cities for assorted reasons, but it was Nome who attracted the attention of the public. From 1960 to 2004, some 24 people went missing there. That number is statistically too big for such a small population. People just didn't come home in the morning, and no one knew what had happened to them. All the locals in small towns like Nome know each other. There are almost no strangers here, as it's difficult to get to Nome. There are no roads and no ferry crossing. All roads from Nome break off and lead to beautiful natural landscapes unspoiled by human mammals. You can get there and back by plane. And this is not some passenger jet, but a small biplane. Another way to get there is by snowmobile. By the way, Nome is the ultimate point of the famous dog sled race, the Iditarod. Also, you can pay locals from neighboring villages and towns to bring you to Nome by motorboat. But despite this, the town has become quite famous. The frequent disappearance of people finally got needed attention. The whole world found out about Nome, and in 2009, Hollywood even made a movie about it. For a long time, no one could solve the mystery. The police had no clues, no witnesses, nothing. There are long, cold nights here in winter, and the air becomes so cold that a glass of water freezes in minutes. Snow can fall constantly. Therefore, if someone leaves the town at night, snow will sweep all traces away by the morning. Of course, people began to come up with their own theories. The most popular one was about someone who took people away by force. The police didn't find any evidence that some person could do it. So, if it's not a human, it could be some beast. And again, police found no evidence to support this version. After that, people started thinking that creatures from other planets caused these disappearances. Many locals were sure that the town was a popular destination for extraterrestrial spaceships. The plot of the Hollywood movie The Fourth Kind was based on this version. More time passed. Finally, the police and the FBI launched a large-scale investigation, and they uncovered the truth. They realized that the stories about missing people were exaggerated. The popularity of Nome and the constant talk about fantastic things made people believe in the reality of these versions. Now, let's assume that some of the appearances were made up. But still, many people are gone. What about them? The answer is bars and harsh weather. Entertainment venues are open at night. Some locals have fun, leave the bar, and go home. At this moment, a heavy snowstorm begins. Visibility drops to zero, and the strong wind knocks you down. This way, a person might simply get lost. And that's it. The truth turned out stranger than most versions. The Bermuda Triangle is a big area in the Atlantic Ocean, so the disappearance of ships and planes there seems not so surprising. But it's much creepier when it happens on a lake. Let's visit the Lake Michigan Triangle. It's located between Michigan and Wisconsin. For a couple of centuries, terrible things have been happening here. People put the same legends around this place as around the Bermuda Triangle. They reported unexplained phenomena and saw flying objects above the lake's surface. Some believe that the triangle is a time portal. Of course, no theories have been confirmed, but strange cases have occurred on the triangle territory. One happened in 1950, when a Northwest Airlines plane with 108 passengers disappeared without a trace during a flight over the lake. Police officers saw a red light over the lake 2 hours after the plane's last communication. The aircraft probably crashed, but rescuers didn't find any passengers or wreckage. All that's left was just an oil stain on the water. Many ships and boats disappeared there. But one of the strangest cases occurred on April 28, 1937. It was midnight. One ship was sailing through this lake. Captain George Donner went to sleep in his cabin after a hard day's work. 3 hours later, the vessel was approaching the port. One of the crew members went to the captain's cabin to wake him up. The door was locked from the inside. The assistant knocked, but no one answered. When he suspected that something had happened to the captain, the assistant unlocked the door. He got into the cabin, but there was no captain there. He seemed to have disappeared into thin air. The crew couldn't find him. Since then, the eerie disappearance of Captain George Donner remains unexplained. Meet David Paulides. In 2008, he finished his career as a police officer and began to study the mysterious disappearance of people in Europe, the USA, and Canada. He found out that most people went missing in the U.S. national parks. Over the past 150 years, more than 1,100 tourists have vanished there. Many of them were experienced travelers who knew how to survive in harsh wild conditions. David has written about these mysterious vanishings. He pointed out that some of them didn't disappear, but were found alive. They woke up somewhere in the forest and didn't remember what had happened to them. The creepy detail of all these cases is that most missing persons were young. Another detail is that many went missing before hurricanes. There are too many riddles and not enough answers in this case. Then there's the Sargasso Sea in the northern part of the Atlantic Ocean. This is the only sea that doesn't have shores on land. It's called the sea only because it's defined by ocean currents. Also, golden brown algae grow in this area's bottom, making it seem like an orange spot in the middle of the endless ocean. The Sargasso Sea became famous because, in the 19th century, one of the most famous phantom ships in history sailed here. In 1872, a brigantine sailed through the Sargasso Sea. Its captain spotted another ship a few miles away. He lit a signal fire, but received no response. Then the captain decided to sail closer to find out what had happened. On the hull of the mysterious ship was the name Mary Celeste. The captain of the brigantine and several crew members went on board. They walked around the deck and looked into the cabins and the hold. Everything was in place, but there were no people. The cargo and barrels remained untouched, so pirates didn't attack the vessel. The only damaged thing on the ship were the sails. They were torn to shreds. All documents except the logbook were missing from the navigator's cabin. The last logbook entry was added on November 24, 1872. The crew of the ship was never found, and this was one of many cases. In the 20th century, from the 60s to the 80s, there were many reports of empty boats and yachts floating on the sea. Also, some entire ships disappeared without a trace. All these cases still remain a mystery. According to one version, the four-sided current forms water funnels. Whirlpools can quickly pull a ship into the depths of the sea. This explains the disappearance of boats. But what about cases when the vessel is still on the water without a crew? Sometimes these whirlpools can create wind vortices. They're like little tornadoes. What if these whirlwinds are powerful enough to throw people overboard and tear the sails? Yeah, the theory seems too fantastic. So, what do you think happened? Now, if you're in an airplane soaring through the air, you may think it's the heaviest object in the sky. But those large cumulus clouds you see shaped like your dog can weigh more than 1 million pounds. Clouds are just tiny drops of water gathered up together. Don't worry, they won't come crashing down in pieces. It may seem like there are infinite stars in the Milky Way galaxy, but NASA experts are convinced that there are potentially 100 to 400 billion stars out there. There are around 3 trillion trees in the world and about 400,000 plant species. Out of all those plants, between 80,000 and 300,000 are edible, but only about 200 of those plants land in different cuisines. If you're standing in Alaska, you can expect Hawaii to inch its way to you ever so slowly. You might not feel it, but tectonic plates are always moving at the same rate as your fingernails are growing. Hawaii moves 3 inches every year because the Pacific Plate is always pushing northward. Bees buzz around with 4 wings instead of 2. The 2 wings you usually see become a single wing when they fly. But when they land and chill around, they unhook back to 4 wings. They even have an invisible chain network where they fly through to go from flower to flower. Bees can fly higher than Mount Everest, which is almost 30,000 feet high. Hurricanes can't rush across the equator because of something called the Coriolis effect, which is also responsible for many megastorms. Low pressures in the northern hemisphere rotate counterclockwise. In the southern hemisphere, it goes clockwise. So, if a hurricane swings by the equator, it won't be able to rotate. The acid inside your stomach so strong it can melt stainless steel. The acid inside is rocking a pH of 2 to 3 and doesn't melt your insides thanks to a stomach lining which secretes a chemical to balance it out. Your body replaces this lining every 4 days or so. Owls have something like eye tubes instead of eyeballs. Humans can turn their heads at a 180-degree angle and can rotate their eyes in multiple directions. Owls don't move their eyes freely like us, but they make up for it by turning their heads 270 degrees. They can see really well at night. Okay, chameleon, we get it. You can move your eyes independently in all directions. Please stop staring at me. If you happen to be in outer space on a planet in our solar system, then chances are you're swimming in diamonds. The atmospheres of planets like Jupiter and Saturn have high pressures that can crystallize carbon atoms and create diamonds. Scientists even claim that all that icy bling rains as much as 2 million pounds yearly in Saturn. The sun will keep getting brighter and hotter and eventually evaporate oceans, making life on Earth like an oven, similar to Venus. Our Milky Way is on its course to a collision with the Andromeda Galaxy. Stars, asteroids, planets, and moons will smash right into each other and destroy everything. Of course, something like this doesn't happen overnight, but eventually the two galaxies will combine into a single mega cluster galaxy. This won't happen for billions of years, though. I won't be around then. Slow lorises with their bugged eyes may be cute, but they're the only venomous primates in the animal kingdom. They get venom from a gland under their armpit before biting a predator. Unfortunately, their numbers are dwindling in the wild. Forests and jungles aren't the only ones responsible for producing the majority of the oxygen you breathe. It's the microscopic creatures called photoplankton that live in the upper layers of water, specifically the oceans. Like plants, they also use photosynthesis to turn sunlight into oxygen. There are so many of them that they contribute 50 to 85% of all the oxygen. Pluto was discovered in 1930, and until now hasn't even made a full rotation around the Sun. It takes Pluto 248 years to make a full orbit, which means Pluto will celebrate with fireworks and countdowns in the year 2178. There have been instances where snow was covering the sandy landscapes of the Sahara Desert, and it isn't even the largest desert on Earth. The winner in that category goes to the Antarctic polar desert. Instead of sand, it's made of frozen water. Even the Sahara receives more rainfall than the Antarctic desert. In 1933, the double eagle was a coin valued at $20. Only a few of these were released, but the trend never picked up, and so the coin was reclaimed. Some were kept, but most were destroyed. In 2002, someone bought one of these coins at an auction for $7.5 million, making it the most expensive coin ever sold at an auction. Kangaroos have a spring-like action on their legs, which makes them hop around. But it's impossible for them to do so without their tails, that act as a counterweight. These hoppers can bounce at a speed of around 15 miles per hour, and kangaroos can't hop backwards. Your favorite summer snack was invented by accident by an 11-year-old boy in 1905. Frank Epperson accidentally left soda powder and water with a wooden stick overnight and got frozen stiff. He called it the Ep cycle at first, but popsicle stuck around, and now they come in many awesome flavors. The biggest animal on Earth weighs as much as 33 elephants. Its tongue alone can be as heavy as one of those elephants. A blue whale's heart can weigh as much as a small car and needs to beat every 10 seconds. 3 big blue whales stacked head to fin are about the length of the Statue of Liberty. A human can even swim through their large veins with ease. The nano chameleon is the tiniest reptile to be discovered. In January 2021, scientists went on an expedition in northern Madagascar rainforests and found this little critter. It feeds on mites and other microscopic creatures and is a little more than half an inch long. Europa is one of Jupiter's many moons and is the closest thing scientists call our next potential home within our solar system. The surface is covered in ice, but it's believed there's an ocean underneath that could be teeming with microscopic living beings. If you're afraid of the dark, then the moon is probably no place for you. Shadows are darker on the moon than on Earth. On our blue planet, the atmosphere is able to scatter more sunlight, unlike on the moon. The people of ancient Greece and Rome used sticky spider webs as natural bandages for patients. The webbings have built-in natural chemicals that help with healing. Spider webs are so strong that 2 inches of wrapped spiderweb material can stop a plane when at landing speed. A study shows that tree shrews have a mutation in their system that makes them less sensitive to spices. They're the only known mammal, other than humans, to enjoy the flavors of mouth-burning chili foods. They did an experiment with a bunch of other mammals and found out that while the mammals avoided the spicy food, the tree shrews gobbled it down without thinking. Dolphins are one of the smartest creatures in the world, partly because they can sleep while being awake. When sleeping in the wild, their brains have to be partially on guard for any predators lurking in the water. When the heat rises in a fire, the air around it rushes to replace it, causing a spinning column to form. And that's how fire tornadoes or fire whirls are born. Octopuses may be rare to spot since they camouflage themselves so well, but they can lay more than 55,000 eggs. The mother will spend the next 6 months taking care of them, and once they hatch, they can be the size of a single rice grain. Next time you're cuddling with your cat, check out their back paws and count how many toes they have. There are 5 toes on each of their forepaws, but only 4 on their hindpaws. Scientists believe it helps them run faster or escape after plotting against you. Chow chows and some other dog breeds have bluish-purple tongues. Giraffes also have tongues of a similar color, except theirs are around 20 inches long. They use them for grabbing leaves from high branches. Next time you visit the Eiffel Tower, take a picture in the summer and the winter. If you have super bionic eyesight, then you'll notice that in the summer, the higher temperatures can make the tower grow by 6 inches. Hey, any view of the Eiffel is an eyeful.
There's a heavy snowstorm. The cold penetrates his bones. His legs are almost knee-deep in snow. Experienced hunter Joe LaBelle makes his way through the forest, covering his face from the headwind. Any other person would have already fallen and screamed in despair, but not Joe LaBelle. He can survive in any circumstances and always knows what to do. Right now, he's heading to one of the villages in the far north of Canada. This small settlement is located on Lake Anjikuni. The inhabitants of this village are Inuit, indigenous people of North America. Joe hasn't eaten or drunk for a long time. He needs a good sleep and a hot meal, which he hopes to get from the hospitable Inuits. Through trees and a white haze, he notices the silhouettes of tents. Smoke is coming from some houses. Joe will probably get there in time for lunch. He reaches the village, and at this moment, the wind calms down. The blizzard has ended. The hunter speeds up and goes toward the village, located along the frozen lake. It's strange, but there are no locals anywhere. Probably everyone is just sitting in their houses, waiting out the blizzard. "Hello!" Joe says loudly, but gets no response. Oh, great! Smoke is coming out of this tent. Joe knocks on the wall, but no one opens it. He knocks a few more times and goes inside. The little tent is empty. All things are in their places. There's a piece of cloth with needles and thread on the table. Firewood is smoldering in the fireplace. It seems that people have just left this place. Joe goes into the next tent and sees the same picture. All things are in their places, but there are no people. Joe walks past the tents and sees a pit where a bonfire once burned. There's a rope above it with the meat that the Inuit were cooking hanging on it. For some reason, they didn't eat it. Lake Anjikuni is part of a chain of waterways. Here, the Inuits fished and traded various goods. Usually, there are many people here, but now something has forced them to leave their homes. Why did they leave their things behind? And where did they go? There are no tracks around the village. All the sleds are in place. The Inuits have even left their dogs here, and dogs help them to hunt and ride sleighs. no one will leave warm clothes and dogs here when moving away, especially in severe weather. Joe LaBelle knows all this, so he concludes that something terrible has happened here. His body is shaking, not from the cold, but from fear. After going around the entire settlement, he finds not a single soul. Terrified, he leaves the village, heads for the nearest telegraph pole, and sends a message to the police. After a while, more and more people arrive. The police are trying to find traces of missing people and figure out what has happened, but there's nothing. Near the village, they find an empty grave. During the ceremony, the Inuits placed stones around the burial site. The rocks around the open pit lie untouched, which means it wasn't an animal that dug it up, but who or what needed it. About 30 people lived in the village, and they're all gone. Local residents from neighboring villages can't help, since they have no idea what has happened. The only thing that the police have noticed is unusual blue lights. In this area, the northern lights are a common phenomenon. People living here regularly see a glow in the starry sky. But the police have seen something else, pulsing blue lights. Also, other hunters have witnessed something similar. They say that some strange things were flying in the sky. This all happened in 1930. It's been almost 90 years since the disappearance of the village, and people have created a bunch of theories. The most popular of them is an attack of an extraterrestrial civilization. According to this theory, the blue lights in the sky that the locals and the police saw were spaceships. Some believe that one ominous night, these ships flew to the settlement and took away all the people. In addition to these sci-fi versions, there were also more realistic ones. Internet users have found out that Joe LaBelle didn't have a hunting license. Maybe he wasn't a professional and made it all up. But at that time, many hunters didn't have a license, so Joe's words may be true. But if we try to find out where all this information came from, we'll see that the primary sources were books and some newspaper articles from the 30s. But none of them can confirm that the mysterious story of Lake Anjakuni is true. Perhaps this entire story was made up. Now let's leave the snows of Canada and head for the hot plains of India. In this big country, there's one sinister village where people also disappeared without a trace. This happened in the first half of the 19th century. Still, locals avoid this place even now because they believe that invisible evil forces live there. Let's check and find out what happened to the village of Kuldara. It's located in the district of Rajasthan. To get there, you can use a taxi to get to the nearest village or city. The village is located far from other settlements. It looks deserted. There are only ruins. It looks like archaeologists have recently dug this place out of the ground and left it here. But this is not an ancient city. The village was abandoned more than 200 years ago. But up to that point, this place had been thriving. Kuldara was a large village. Local people were mostly farmers. They sold their agricultural products. And then, one night, everything changed. People abandoned their homes and stuff and ran away from there. No one knows why they did it, and no one knows where they went. Nobody has ever seen the inhabitants of Kuldara again. Apart from tourists, almost no one comes here. The locals are sure that the village is cursed and is the center of paranormal activity. If you ask residents of other nearby towns or read the information on the internet, you'll learn a couple of legends about this place. One popular version says that people left this village because of a lack of water. However, this version doesn't explain why the residents did it overnight and left their things behind. According to another version, the villagers ran away to save the daughter of the Kuldara chief. One local ruler fell in love with her and wanted to marry her. He threatened the locals with grave consequences if the girl rejected him. The the ruler gave them 1 day to make a decision. The residents disagreed with such a requirement. As a sign of solidarity, they decided to leave the village together with the chief and his daughter. But if this is true, why did no one else see these people? They must have escaped to another settlement. In addition, they needed their things on the way there. The stories of Kuldara and Lake Anjakuni have one thing in common. People left a comfortable and safe place for an unknown reason. A similar story happened in Ireland with a small village on the island of Achill. About 40 simple houses made of stone and straw were located along the valley of Keem Bay. The village was mentioned in documents dated back to the 1830s as a group of small buildings. But today, there's practically nothing left of it, except pieces of walls and small mounds of ground. People from other settlements don't remember this village, but we know about it thanks to the records of travel writers. They describe the incredible beauty of this place and the village in their diaries. Students of the local archaeological school tried to find the answers. They started excavations and discovered that the villagers could have left the village because of hunger or